Hi, good afternoon and welcome back to Homespun in Wales. Oh boy, is it hot. In this country we're not used to this type of heat at all, and it is now, what time is it? It's only just coming up to midday. I've been indoors since about 9 o'clock. It's just too hot, and I think we're already here in Wales where I am, we're already in the low 30s. That's Celsius. Excuse me, I've got the fan going there, so it's blowing me about a bit. I was going to film outside today in the sunshine, and I got everything all set up, ready to go, and next door decided he was going to cut his grass with his ride-on in this heat, and so he started trundling up and down, making a racket. So I thought, right, I'll go down the cabin, moved everything down here, and as soon as I've got everything set up down here, he stopped, of course, because it is too hot, and this is not the weather you cut grass, unless you want to kill your grass, that is. Yeah, and I thought, well, I'm not moving anything back outside again now. So we're down the cabin, and let me move round away from the fan a bit there, because it's blowing my hair all over the place as well as keeping me cool. So it's been a hot couple of weeks. We are in a very unprecedented heat wave at the moment, and it's I'm glad I'm not living back where we were, which is on the outskirts of London, because I believe today London might be hitting 40 degrees, and because it's so closed in with buildings and roads and everything else, it's just going to be unbearable there. I've just been chatting to Mandy on the phone this morning, and she's struggling with the heat as well, because she lives out that way, and she said it's just unbearable. So I'm glad we're here in Wales, and we're at least we're going to be at least 6 degrees lower than what they are over there. So anyway, that's enough about the weather. We mustn't really complain about it. We don't get vast amount of heat like you do in other countries, and it's always welcoming when we have a bit of sunshine. Next week is going to be more normal temperatures, so that'll be quite pleasant. It will be warm and bearable. And of course our houses don't have air conditioning. That's the other problem. I'm in an old Welsh farmhouse, which is actually very cool inside, because our walls are about 2 foot thick. They're stone, and so they keep they just keep it all nice and cool inside. So when you walk into the house, it's considerably a lot better than what it is outside. But down here in the cabin, of course, I've got we're going to move round. I've just got the fan going. So what have I been up to? Right, I've got lots of little bits and pieces done. First off, I have finished the unicorn. There he is, all finished. I'm thinking of turning it into a dream catcher. Not sure yet, but that's that finished, out of the way. So, and it was quite enjoyable sitting doing that in the evenings. And of course I left you when I was unpicking a quilt that my mother-in-law had been attempting to do about 2 years ago, maybe 3, when her eyesight was already going and her dementia was starting to take hold. And grab it a minute. Oh, and I took it to the craft group and sat there that afternoon and unpicked it all, and I have the panel here all unpicked, ready to be, and it's down here in the cabin so I can pop it on the long arm and turn it back into a beautiful quilt that it should have been, and it will be donated to one of the children's charities. So that was that job out of the way. That was in my June box. The other thing, what else was in the June box? Can't remember now. Was it unravelling? And I got all that done, and that was done out of the way. So my June box is all done. We've still got a week of June to go, and I was sitting there twiddling my thumbs in the evening. Didn't want to start a new project. I did contemplate it, and I actually went into the blanket box with all my cross stitch and embroidery kits and everything I kept, and I contemplated pulling one out and starting it, and then I thought no, I'm not doing that. I want to clear as many unfinished projects, hence having them all in boxes for the month, clear as many as possible this year, because next year we are planning on putting the farm up for sale, and we're planning to move. Fingers crossed, all goes to plan. So the more I get done out of the way, the easier the packing will be. The packing will be bad enough down here, but this is also why I'm decluttering and going through things and getting rid of things and so forth. All of them units back there, all full of fabric, and underneath the long arm is just boxes and boxes of fabric. And of course I've got more fabric up in my sewing room. So yeah, so I sort of pulled myself in check, and I thought no, you're not pulling out another unfinished project, another project to start. You're not going to do a new start. In fact, I think what I should do is pack all of the kits up and put them in a big box and seal it, so that I'm not tempted to go in there at all. But I always like to have something to sit and do in the evening, so I went into my July box. Yes, I know it's early. Went into my July box, and there was a sock there that I was knitting. This yarn came from Lidl's, and it's their elasticated yarn, so it's got quite a nice stretch to it, which means of course, you know, that the socks are nice and stretchy, and it's just a self-patterning stripy yarn, and it's knitted over DPNs. Now I pulled it out because I was reading the instructions for the socks came on the ball band. Now I've knitted many socks over the years, and I thought, oh well, you know, I quite like their ribbing there on the sock and that, and I thought I'll just follow their instructions. Cast it on, knit it, ribbed it, did all that, got down, did the heel flap, and then somewhere in the translation on the ball band it no longer made sense. It was like I was reading double Dutch, and this must have been back at beginning of the year, and maybe it was last year, end of last year. It might have been autumn time. Anyway, whenever it was, because the ball band wasn't making sense with their instructions after. Oh, so I'd got all that done, and I'd got the heel flap here done, and I was ready to do the turn of the heel. I didn't want to frog it all back and go back to my usual pattern and redo it all, so it just got put away, and it ended up in the July box. It must have been, oh, not the beginning of this year, it must have been autumn summer, autumn last year, because I did the boxes, didn't I, in December. So it ended up in the July box. And I spotted it there, and I thought, oh, I can pull that out, I can sit and do that in the evenings. So I pulled it out, got the instructions out, reread them, still didn't make any sense. It was just, it was like I was reading a foreign language. I think because initially the pattern had been written in German, in the translation it hadn't been translated properly. So good old ChatGPT, I took a photo of the instructions, sent them over to ChatGPT, told her which bit I was at, and asked her to translate the instructions into plain English, which she did. I understood them straight away. I then did my turn of the heel, and then of course the next bit was the decrease for the gusset. Well, the picking up was easy enough to do. The decrease for the gusset was the next, and again their instructions made no sense, so I asked ChatGPT to translate, to rewrite the whole pattern in plain English, which she did for me, and I then printed it out, and I've marked on it the amount of rows I've been doing, because I have been keeping a note of them all. So I've been sitting doing that. I've now done all the decreases, and I'm now working on the foot. So I'm quite pleased I pulled that out, and I'm quite pleased that ChatGPT was able to help me out, really. I did try searching online for the instructions, or if anybody else had issues, but anybody I found with that yarn, they'd knitted to their own sock pattern. So whether they'd given up with the Lidl's one or not, I don't know. So that's what I've been sitting doing in the evenings for the past couple of evenings now. I have been down here in the cabin during the day. I downloaded a free design of Embroidery Library, and it was for the impression of a stained glass picture. I'll pop in up here what it makes. Whoops. And it's stitched out on organza with water soluble stabilizer, and then it's all been mounted onto a glass block with lights behind it, so it looks like stained glass. So I stitched that out when I was down here, and I also started stitching, I don't know why I do them, because they do frustrate me a lot, a sweet pea design, bag design, and this is for the crossover body bag. So I've got all the bits stitched out, all the bits are stitched out. The main body, the front pocket piece with the inset pocket, the band that goes round with the zip in the top there, and the strap protector and everything. So I've got it all stitched out. Right, what I find frustrating with Sweet Pea is this bag alone is 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 separate panels, and you think 15, you know, so you're rehooping 15 times, but it's like a little panel like that. Now 2 panels together could have been done in a hoop. You know, that whole panel could have been done in a hoop, but they break it down into such small components, so you're sitting there all day hooping, rehooping. And the other thing I find frustrating is, right, so say this little panel here at the top, which is, let me have a quick measure, 5.5 inches high by Just turn it around that way, it'll be easier. 7 inches wide. Now this was the one that was hooked up in the 6x10, so this was a 6x10 bag, which means the hoop size you're using is 6x10, not the bag size is 6x10. The bag itself has come out at 14 inches high, and at the widest part it is 8 inches. But for that little piece at the top, instead of giving you an actual measurement, the pieces you're cutting out, you've got like a 4-inch wastage of fabric on it, you know, 2 inches round all the way around. And every time I do sweet pea I have this issue. As well as all that, you've then got all the linings to cut as well. The measurements they give are there's too much margin there, and every time I say I'm not going to cut one out again, not going to sit there and cut out a panel 5.5 inches by 7 inches, and then another one where I've got to do 6 inches by 7.5 inches or something. So I'm not going to do them. I'm just going to work from my big piece of fabric, lay it on, stitch it down, and then trim it up, because I spent half a day just cutting out pieces for it. And I've got so frustrated with the thing that it's all sitting there now in bits waiting to be put together, and at some point it will be. And I don't know why they do that. It's like they're overcomplicating the whole thing. That's my gripe on sweet pea. But then they don't just do it with their bags, they do it with quilt blocks as well. For example, let me just show you. Right, my daughter for Christmas wants a monochromatic quilt. Well, she wants a monochromatic quilt. She's the only one I've never made a quilt for. And so I said I would do her one. Now her bedroom's going to be in navy. And there's a design I picked out which was for a monochromatic quilt from Sweet Pea. Fairly straightforward blocks. I don't know how well you can see the detail. That's one of the blocks. Now these blocks are 7x7, are they? I think they are. Oh, she says, look, let me look on the measure. Yeah, they're 7x7 when they're done, so this is 7.5 by 7.5. So you'd think at most I'd want a square measuring 8x8. But the measurement they give you is 9 inches by 9 inches. So there's a lot of wastage because you're trimming it down 1/2 inch seam allowance. So you're trimming it down to 7.5 by 7.5 inches from a 9 by 9 block. That is a lot of fabric wastage. And it's the same with the wadding, because you're adding the wadding as you go. Now supplies are expensive enough as it is without deliberately wasting. I did for this quilt pre-cut everything because I took it with me to the retreat, and I take it with me when I go on the machine embroidery days, which I'm doing on Friday. And it's just a nice easy one to take. I've got everything pre-cut ready, 1 reel of thread needed, no colour changes, and it's not something I have to sit and concentrate on too much when there's a lot going on around me. So it's all pre-cut to take, and but yeah, the wastage, the fabric wastage does infuriate me a lot. You know, they could have just cut it down by 1 inch and said cut out 8x8 blocks, but they don't. It's 9 by 9. So that's my gripes. That's a finish, a half finish, in progress quilt, which is just work in progress, and it will be for the rest of the summer through into autumn. Every time I come down here, if I've got the long arm going, I'll have the quilting machine just churning out these blocks. Not the quilting machine, the embroidery machine. It's set up over there. Now, quilts revisited. At the beginning of the year, I started with good intentions doing the Debbie Shaw year of quilting. You remember it? And I had a gripe about that because the blocks were just, the instructions, they're not good. They're not brilliant. This one. And after 3 blocks, the first 2, it's definitely not, it's not for beginners. The issue is, right, you've got a block, and instead of the instructions being here, you then have to flick, you might have to flick to the back for a template. So all the templates are in the back. Trace out your template, and then you have to go to the front to page such and such, where all the techniques are, and then when you're reading that technique, it might say go to page such and such to continue, or for another variation. So you're backwards and forwards in the book all the time, and that's how you end up missing bits and making mistakes. So I did get annoyed with the book, and after 3 blocks I put it away, and I swore I would never touch it again. But I do like the design. It's a nice sampler quilt. Nice. There's lots and lots of different techniques on there. And the idea of doing a block a week, and they're different size blocks. Some of them are long rectangular blocks, some are little square blocks, some are big square blocks, some are appliqued, you know, there's all sorts. There's foundation paper piecing, English paper piecing, there's applique blocks, there's your typical like log cabin blocks, wild geese, all that type of thing. So there's lots of variations, and there's a good amount of different fabrics used in it as well. And now I was sitting in my sewing room and I was looking, because I did have the fabrics pulled for this, and they were sitting there in a basket on the side, and I thought, really, if I'm not going to do the quilt, I should put them away again, even though I'd cut them all out to size and everything. I thought that they can go away. So I pulled down the basket, and then I thought, let me just have a look at the blocks I'd done. So, and as I say, I had done 3 blocks. Right. I think I'd done that one. I had done that one. Oh, and that one. They're the 3 I did. And it was when I came to block 4 that it actually broke me, because I just couldn't, the instructions were really starting to annoy me. So and I had them all cut out. I unpicked, so I sat there that afternoon and I unpicked them, reread the instructions and reread them and reread them, and they just weren't making sense. And the thing was, it was English paper piecing. Now with English paper piecing, you, following their instructions, you left the paper in, and that to me you don't do. Anyway, I put the block together my way, so that was block number 4. And then I thought, oh, perhaps I could continue. Maybe the next instructions aren't so bad. And the next one wasn't too bad. It was fairly easy to do. The instructions actually made sense for a change. That same evening, I then cut out pieces for another block. that one, which I put together user's error. Instead of, I should have taken a picture of it actually, instead of the points facing out, I did it with all the points facing in, and when I looked at it and looked at their picture, realised what I did, unpicked the whole thing and redid it. So I have carried on with it. So I've got that one done. That's one of the long rectangular ones. I've got another long rectangular one done. That one was a fairly easy one to put together. And then there's been a couple of big blocks, so it's a variation on a log cabin. And so I prefer doing the bigger blocks to the little ones. And there's this one. And then there's recently been another small one. So as you can see, and I did all that, that was block 3 I finished on. I've now done 11 blocks, and that was all done in a week. So I'm going to continue with it. I'm going to try and get up to date with doing the weekly blocks at least. Although it's a bit hot at the moment to be sitting up there doing blocks. What I did find helpful was, because of the amount of fabrics, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 9 fabrics in total, different fabrics. And of course they refer to them as fabric A, fabric B, C, D, and so forth. So when you're looking and it says on the block, right, cut out, hang on, I shall have to put my glasses on for this bit because I cannot see it. Right, 4 3.5 inch squares in fabric D, 4 in fabric E, 4 in fabric F. And I'm then having to go backwards and forwards through the book to look to see which ones they're referring to. So I took a little sample of each fabric and I did a fabric index. So now when it says in the pattern fabric D, I know it's this fabric I'm looking at. Or, you know, the only one I haven't got on here is the white, because the white is the background fabric and they just refer to it as WW. It's supposed to be a white on white, but I didn't have white on white. That has made it easier. I still don't like the flicking backwards and forwards in the book, but short of photocopying all the techniques out, and I would still have to flick through them. So yeah, so I am, that is a quilt I have revisited, and of course the navy monochromatic book quilt is one that I revisit continually. Yeah, so that's my revisiting quilts, and I think I showed you I've cut out all the fine French linen quilt and I've put that in a box. That's now upstairs in my sewing room waiting to be sewn together. I don't want to start sewing it together yet because I want to get a few other things cleared out of the way first. So what else have I been doing? Right, the other week we had the alpaca sheared. We've only got 4 alpacas now. 2 creamy white ones and 2 gingery brown ones. And every year I say to the shearer, John the shearer, when he comes, can you bag up the blankets separate? The blanket is the bit around the main body, and that is like your first cut. The second cut is all the bits on the neck and the legs, and they're all tiddly little bit, but the blanket is the nice longer fibre. So I always ask for the blanket to be bagged up separate, and I've done that for years now. We've had alpacas for 12 years, and I know that is bags of alpaca fleece in the attic from when we moved here. That came with us. And last year before, 2 winters ago, I got rid of a load of the bags of second cuts. Over the years I have given a few alpaca fleeces away to people who wanted to have a go at spinning or whatever with it. So I started sorting out the bags of second cuts, and some of them got used for mulch around the garden, and some were used to help infill where we had a mud problem in the gateway, and they were used for some sheep fleeces as well. So the whole lot was just sort of put down to help soak up the mud, and then there was gravel and stone and everything put up on top. And eventually, of course, they will break down, but they mat. They felt with the vehicles going over, and so it just makes it an easier gateway. And so some of the second cuts got used for that. There's been the odd fleece I've managed to spin up, and I've got one that I'm in the progress of doing a peg loom rug with. But of course, every year when we get them sheared, I always have good intentions of, I'm going to do something with the fleeces this year. I think I've got about 24 fleeces. 24? I think I've got about 24 fleeces in total. And that includes the 4 from this year. So the other day, I thought, I'm going to use up this year's fleeces at least. I'm not going to add to the pile. I don't want to move and take fleeces with me. As you saw in one of my videos a few weeks back, I was finishing up some spinning that I had there. So my spinning wheel was empty. I had so I sat there the other day, I emptied the bobbins and got them washed into skeins, washed and weighted, etc. And then they were wound up into cakes ready to use. So those are done. So all the bobbins are empty now on my spinning wheel. So I decided this year I was going to get stuck in with doing fleeces. And the other day, because we got such nice weather this week, so the other day I made a start. So I pulled out one of the cream fleeces, which is stored up in my other shed, and I washed it, got it dried, and then I decided I was going to dye it. Now I had some bottles of Rit dye there, so this is all using stuff up, not to take it with me when I move. So I dyed the yellow. I dyed it yellow. This is a sunshine yellow. So half the fleece got dyed yellow, which, as you can see, is quite nice. But the good thing about it, because I didn't leave it sitting in there for ages and ages and ages, some of it is lighter where the dye hasn't penetrated enough, and some of it is really dark, and the tips are exceedingly dark. So that was that half of the fleece. The other half of the fleece I did, this was a violet Rit dye. Oops, it's got stuck in the zip. Right, so it's a nice heathery violet colour, and I really like that. That's quite nice, and they are so soft. The dirt that came off them was unbelievable. There wasn't a lot of vegetation, but there was a lot of dust. So while they were drying out in the sun, I have got a little video I can show you when there we go. That's one lot of fleece, and that's another lot of fleece. So yeah, so I'm just about to pull these out and start rinsing them out, and then I can hang them up to dry. So I've got them in mesh bags, and I've just dunked my hand straight into the dye, which I shouldn't be doing because I have got my rubber gloves handy. Right, so let me get my rubber gloves, and then we'll go over to the tap and we'll start rinsing them off. Right, I'm going to pull out one of the brown gingery chestnut colour ones and get that washed. And of course the dark colour you can't really dye. There's that vegetation, the bit I pull out has got a bit of vegetation in it. Where's that gone? Right, so that's the brown, that's now been washed. So I've washed the whole of the brown fleece, and I've washed and dyed one of the cream fleeces. Tomorrow, because I'm going out this afternoon to the craft group, tomorrow I'm at home all day, so I'm going to try and get the other cream fleece washed and the other brown fleece washed, so at least that's this year's ones all washed and done. So these are now ready to be carded. I had a go at sample blending a bit of yellow with a bit of brown. It didn't come out too bad, but I did a 50-50 sample blend on that. But I think I'm going to do 25% brown to 75% yellow, because the yellow was getting lost in with the brown. The pink, I tried blending that with the brown and I didn't like how it came out, so I'm going to keep that as pink. And if I get them carded up, that means I can sit there then in the evenings and spin them. So once these ones are done from this year, I'm going to pull out, well, we've got nice weather for the rest of this week, so that means I should get them dried easy enough. There was some leftover dye in the tubs, and it still looked fairly strong. There was a lot of colour in it. I had a white shirt, a long white shirt that I never really wore. It's been hanging in the wardrobe, and there's a bit of a story to the wardrobe, but it was hanging in the wardrobe, and I was having a purge on the wardrobe a fortnight ago. And in our wardrobe it's double depth, so you've got your normal depth, and then you've got it again, it's in an alcove, it's built into the alcove in the bedroom, which is fine because it means I've got two lots of depth of hanging space, but I've actually got three, because there's at the back there's a rail halfway down, and the other rail is right at the very top, ceiling height. And at the front, the rail is ceiling height. Now, the ceiling height is too high for me. I'm only 5 foot 2, 5 foot 3, and ceiling height is 8 foot. So I have a little 18-inch, quite a solid little square stool that I stand on to reach the top rail in the wardrobe. So in my efforts to try and declutter, and I am trying to go through clothes, pulling clothes out, getting rid of them. At the very back top rail was this long white shirt. There's a wasp up there, as long as he stays up there out of the way. And I've worn this white shirt once, and when I wore it, because it's long, it looked like a doctor's coat on me. So anyway, I was pulling these clothes out of the wardrobe that were at the very back on the top rail, standing on my little stool. Took my slippers off, so I'm not standing there in slippers. And so I'm doing that. Martin had gone off to work, so I was on my own in the house. And I'm taking things out and I'm throwing them onto the bed behind me. And then when I'd finished, I turned on the stool, went to step off, and as I went to step off, the stool flipped upside down, and of course I fell, and the backs of my legs caught the bar on the stool. It broke the stool, and my legs were trapped between the legs of the stool. Now I don't claim to be slim, and if I was to drop quite a few pound I probably wouldn't have had an issue, but there was my legs trapped between the legs of the stool, and I'm laying there on the floor, half in the wardrobe, half out, and I'm on my own in the house, and my phone was downstairs being recharged, and I just couldn't get out. There wasn't enough space between the bed and the wardrobe for me to be able to get out, so I had to wiggle along, trapped in this stool, to get to the big space in the bedroom where I could then turn over and manage to get out of the whole thing. The backs of my legs were absolute agony for days, and they turned a multitude of colours, and my ankle did, and my elbow, which is still very painful, but the whole of this area was black and blue, and the end of my elbow is still quite painful. Yeah, so that was there was no good shouting for help because there's nobody around, nobody could have heard me, and I was just stuck, and I did initially think I was going to be left lying there until he came home from work, which is just what I wasn't, because he didn't get home till 7 that evening. I'd have had all sorts of accidents in the bedroom. Anyway, I survived that. Yeah, my legs were sore, bruises were all sore. The clothes were cleared off the bed and thrown into the spare room. And the other day I got round to sorting through them clothes, and I was bagging up a lot to go down the charity shop. Now when I was going back to the dyeing, when I was doing the dyeing and there was dye left in there, and I suddenly thought, oh, that long white shirt, and I bought it because it's a long shirt and I like wearing long shirts, but the white just made it look like a doctor's coat. And it's the type of shirt you wear with the buttons open. So I thought, oh, I wonder. So I went upstairs, pulled it out the charity bag, and I put half in one dye bath, half in the other dye bath, and just let them soak up and meet in the middle. And I will now show you a result of it. So it's turned out quite nice. I wore it yesterday morning. We went into town yesterday, yeah, and I wore it then. So it's now going back in the wardrobe. So I'm quite happy with how that turned out, because I like the style of shirt. Right, so that's me finished rabbiting on. I've been going on now for well over my allotted time. So I am going to wind up here and go and get some lunch and get myself organised to go to the craft group. I'm just taking me little sock with me to carry on knitting, because no doubt it's going to be very hot in there. And yeah, and tomorrow hopefully I will get another couple of fleeces washed up. And then Friday I'm down to the embroidery group, so that'll be the navy quilt I'll be taking with me for that. Right, I'm going to wind up there, so take care everybody, and hope you're all coping well with the heat, and I will speak to you again very, very soon.